Now, Nicaragua alleges that Germany, in providing support and military aid to Israel and in suspending aid to UNRWA, has violated these obligations. Germany is violating its obligations by giving support to Israel, knowing that there is a plausible risk that they're committing genocide and committing war crimes. Germany argues that it is not in violation of its obligations under international law and that war weapons are giving ammunition, tanks, combat aircraft, whereas other military equipment includes subordinate military equipment such as infrared technology, such as communications equipment, and that is what it has been providing since October 7th. The International Court of Justice has just finished hearing arguments from Nicaragua and Germany in the case that Nicaragua brought against Germany under the Genocide Convention and the Geneva Conventions of 1949. Now, Nicaragua alleges that Germany, in providing support and military aid to Israel and in suspending aid to UNRWA, has violated these obligations. Nicaragua notes that Germany is not party to the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Germany is not an occupying power. There are no German boots on occupied Palestinian territory. However, it argues that Germany is violating its obligations by giving support to Israel, knowing that there is a plausible risk that they're committing genocide and committing war crimes. In terms of looking at the arms transfers, Alain Pele, the lawyer for Nicaragua, the counsel for Nicaragua, said it wasn't business as usual for Germany in terms of arms transfers. It was business better than usual, noting that they had skyrocketed after October 7th, 2023, noting that Germany was continuing its support for Israel, a state it calls its raison d'etat, a reason for it to be a state in and of itself. A key issue for Germany was the monetary gold principle. This is a case that came out in 1943, which says that the court will not rule on the lawfulness of conduct of a state which is not a party to the case before it. Nicaragua argues that we're not asking you to rule on Israel's conduct, on the lawfulness or not of its conduct. That is the subject of another case. That is the subject of South Africa versus Israel. What we are asking you to do is note what Germany is doing in violation of its own obligations. And these obligations hinge on the fact that it has an obligation to prevent a genocide. And that obligation to prevent a genocide necessarily has to occur before a genocide is being committed. It cannot just be once you've proven a genocide that obligation kicks in. It kicks in when you're put on public notice, which Nicaragua argues Germany was in January after the ICJ gave its provisional order saying that there was a plausible risk that genocide was being committed. That obligation kicked in then, and that Germany has not complied with that obligation, neither under the Genocide Convention nor under Common Article 1 of the Geneva Conventions to ensure respect for them in light of the war crimes which are occurring. Now, Germany's rebuttal today focused on the fact that it differentiates between war weapons and other military equipment. So Germany argues that it is not in violation of its obligations under international law and that war weapons are giving ammunition, tanks, combat aircraft, whereas other military equipment includes subordinate military equipment such as infrared technology, such as communications equipment, and that is what it has been providing since October 7th. It says that 98% of its military exports include this other military equipment and not war weapons, and that even when they have given war weapons in the form of ammunition, this ammunition has been to be used in training purposes only and not for combat. Germany also argues that it has given a threefold increase in aid to the occupied Palestinian territories. So while it might have defunded or not defunded, it argues that it just decided not to go ahead in the future in giving funds for UNRWA. It says that it has meanwhile given a threefold increase in terms of aid to other aid agencies working in the occupied Palestinian territories. Germany also argued on the basis of admissibility that the case was inadmissible before the court because hinging on the monetary gold principle, it necessarily includes that the court would make a determination as to the lawfulness of the conduct of a state which is not a party to it, i.e. Israel, in the sense that there would have to be breaches of international law by Israel for Germany to be complicit in them and to be supporting them and to be liable for its failure in its obligation to prevent a genocide. When it comes to the failure to prevent a genocide, it also looked at the cases of Bosnia versus Serbia and Croatia versus Serbia, and said that the court there had necessarily said that if there is no genocide, there is no obligation to prevent a genocide. That argument it does not pertain to this stage of proceedings. There, the court was looking at it after the fact, but it does say that for there to be an obligation to not prevent a genocide, there has to be a genocide there. That was at the crux of Germany's argument. It said Israel is not a party to the court, it should not be determining this case at all, and to strike it off your general cause list. In terms of what the court will decide, we will probably have a provisional order measure soon, perhaps within a month. It might be difficult for Nicaragua at this stage to prove that there is irreparable harm to Palestinians caused by Germany in giving this support. However, the court will be asked to pronounce on obligations pertaining to an obligation to prevent a genocide, the obligation to ensure respect for the Geneva Conventions, and what these mean, because we've never had a case like this before where the court has had to sit down and discuss what these obligations actually mean in tangible terms, and what it means for third-party states in giving aid support to a state which may be carrying out such violations. And this is particularly so in light of the fact that the court did in January say that there is a plausible risk that there is a genocide being committed in the occupied Palestinian territories. And so looking at the failure to prevent a genocide there, that may necessarily entail that there are obligations on third-party states. But again, we can't really say whether even the court will take on the case, whether it will decide it's admissible or not, and how it will pronounce on any of these issues. So we will wait for the provisional order to see what the court decides.